I was talking to a guy one time. It was through one of the dating apps, and we hadn't got to the point yet, like that we're gonna share deep dark secrets, right? And so I had never said anything yet. We were just chatting and getting to know each other a little bit. Well, then the show was advertised because it was about to start airing for that season. Must have been last season. And he sent me a message. He's like, so I'm all about honesty, and I just need to just be upfront with you. I saw this advertisement for the show, and you're on it. And so he's like, I can't. I'm not interested. Basically, like, he was very kind and he was very respectful, but he was just like, nope, not interested. You know, with your religious background and stuff, I'm just not.
Meri Brown sat down for an interview on a podcast called I Do Part 2 with TJ Holmes and Amy Robach, who are formerly from a morning show where they were co-hosts and then were fired because people found out they were in a relationship while they were both married at the time. Their careers blew up, and now they host this podcast. They interviewed Meri Brown about her time on Sister Wives, her life, dating, and what life is like now after leaving polygamy. The hosts really went there in a lot of different areas when it came to Meri leaving Kody, Meri leaving her religion, and Meri dating today. One detail that Meri brought up in her interview is that she admitted she was in a cult. And she admitted that she was married to Kody because she believed that she had to be married to him to get to the celestial kingdom, and that she was taught from a young age that this was the only way that she could get to heaven. Meri admitted, even more importantly, that she had been questioning her faith since before the show ever started, which is similar to a lot of what had been heard from Christine. They were saying things on the show that they didn't even necessarily believe, and doing it because they were promoting polygamy, even though behind the scenes they didn't believe in what they were saying. They were making it look like polygamy was this happy thing, when the reality was that what they were pontificating and promoting and advocating for, they couldn't handle or appreciate or believe themselves, and they didn't like. On the show, they were promoting polygamy, saying it's not like Warren Jeffs. Women have a choice. They're not there because of religion. They said they were there because it's their faith, but they're not there solely because of religion, and they're doing this out of choice, and they're not a cult. They presented themselves as loving families and said this isn't bad, and that everyone needs to just accept them because this is what they want. But privately, Meri in this interview discussed that prior to the show starting, she had begun questioning her faith. When they asked her why she was questioning her faith, she stated that it was because every time something happened in this group, she was wrong for it, all of it. The interviewer acknowledged that any structured religion is very cult-like and asked about the point at which she said she wanted out. Meri explained it was gradual for her, really gradual. She thinks that it was even before they moved to Las Vegas, maybe around the time that they were talking about doing the show, 15 or 16 years ago. She found herself questioning, but she never talked to anybody about it. She never talked to Kody about it. She didn't talk to her sister wives about it. It was just something that she was processing within herself because there were so many things up until that point in her life that she was always wrong for. She was wrong for how she handled marriage. She was wrong because her body was wrong for not being able to have more babies. She was wrong when she would have jealousy issues when wives would come into the family. And now she was questioning her religion. So she wasn't going to talk to anybody about it because she was also going to be wrong for that. The narrator pauses here to recognize and honor what Meri went through, explaining that what she describes is something a lot of people could probably resonate with. Growing up in environments where someone is always blamed for everything, where it was always their fault, where if something happened, they had done something to upset God. There was a lot of fear, a lot of guilt and shame that was laid on someone as a child that made them feel like they were less than. If they couldn't measure up or weren't doing something right, there was always this underlying message that they were the problem, and it eroded their self-esteem. When someone is born into something and everyone around them is doing it and they are pushing up against the grain and they have a personality that is inquisitive and questioning and they don't fit the mold of what is expected of them, the only way that the system can keep them in that system is to destroy their self-esteem, destroy their self-worth, erode their self-confidence, make them feel like it's their fault, and that if they only act better, do better, and are better, then things will get better. But then also teach them that part of the journey in the world is that all of this suffering that they're going through is for the greater good because they'll have better blessings in heaven. If they're more humble, if they sacrifice more, if they humble themselves and stop acting selfishly and submit and obey, everything will be better. And then one day they realize it's not, and they get tired of getting blamed. The narrator reflects on how the really damaging part of this show that the women may not even recognize yet is that because they sat up there and lied to themselves and lied to the world about what was going on in their lives, it created a visceral reaction from viewers where they started judging them because they were lying. People judged them because they believed that they were being stupid, and it was ridiculous that they were fighting over this guy and couldn't see that he was just a jerk and that they deserved more. But that indoctrination kept them in a situation that if they were going to speak out to anyone in their family, they would just get gaslit and manipulated. Anytime Meri tried to spread her wings and become more independent, she was constantly gaslit by Robyn that she shouldn't go to college because then she would be abandoning the family. She was told not to do things because then she would be giving up on them. Everyone was doing it to her. Kody would play games with her, back and forth, and then she had the guilt of the cult on her. The show did a disservice to the women because had they grown up in an environment where they didn't have those kinds of strangleholds on them that had beaten them down and knocked them into submission and told them not to educate themselves and that they didn't need to be educated or have anything beyond being a mom and a wife, they could have accomplished their goals outside of what their faith told them that they were to be. She was shamed because she could only have one child. She was told that she had to be okay with her husband having relations with other women. She was told that if she was jealous because her husband had relations with other women, that she was the problem, not him. She was the one that needed to manage her emotions about what he was doing because she was supposed to do this to get into heaven. And if she couldn't handle it, then she wasn't doing it well enough, and that it was her place and it was wrong. This helps explain why she stayed silent, and why it would make her feel like she had no place in the family and no control. And honestly, it would explain a lot of her behaviors when it came to the kids and her space. Because if someone is questioning why they're even in a family to begin with and they're hesitating and wondering why they're there, and they want separation from it, it's not unreasonable for her to have an expectation that people not walk through her home, that she wants to distance herself from it because she needs her own autonomy, that she needs a place where she can be herself. There was a lot of entitlement in that they were trying to do things as a family, but they were all pulling away in different places. And sometimes because of the programming that they were going through, they weren't able to even have the trust to open up to one another. Someone couldn't open up to a sister wife because if they said something, they were going to turn around and tell Kody, and then they would get in trouble. So then they had to live in a world where they lived on eggshells and with secrets, and they weren't allowed to actually be themselves, and they didn't know who they could trust. And if they did even confide in their family, they were also going to gaslight them and make them feel like they were wrong and that they did something and they just needed to suck it up and do more and be better. If someone reads Christine's book, she speaks a lot to her experience with Meri, and she has empathy to a degree for what Meri went through. But the narrator doesn't think Christine has the full circle empathy, because if she had that and could view it from the outside, Christine became like Meri once Robyn entered the picture. Christine became jealous. Christine became the one that was harder to get along with. Christine became more confrontational with Kody. Christine had struggles and couldn't hold up her emotions with Robyn. There were plenty of times where she was very direct with Robyn, and she would lash out and say things. Christine wasn't doing anything wrong by behaving that way. She was reacting and having her heart broken. But if she could put herself in Meri's shoes, she would see that Meri was the same way with her. The really sad thing about this cult is that because everyone is dealing with so much trauma and so much pain, they have a hard time seeing each other's perspective because they can't see beyond their own pain. This has been seen in other groups that have been dealt with, specifically a group that was worked on for a documentary. There was a lot of trauma with survivors and a lot of trauma with the survivors not trusting one another and not being able to see beyond their own experience because their experience was so painful that it didn't matter what the other person's experience was, because that other person's experience was a detriment and painful for them too. So they had no empathy. This is on purpose and by design. If everyone's in fight or flight mode and in a trauma response, it creates the perfect environment for the person that's at the top to control them. Just because Christine says things about Meri doesn't mean that represents Meri's whole story or even represents the truth. Christine probably had a lot of disagreements with Meri, and Meri was probably hard on the kids. And Meri probably did freak out and yell, but Christine probably did things too that upset Meri, and she had to accept her husband having children with others and had to accept her husband and her income being stretched out across all these other people that she didn't even know that she really wanted to be around. It was an unhealthy environment where she had to lie to everyone, and that really framed how everyone in the world has seen her and how people have picked apart these women. The narrator suggests that if Christine and Meri weren't sister wives and were never in a cult together, they would be more alike than different, and they probably would have been friends. Meri's response of wanting to control her environment was a response to trauma, because when someone can't control their surroundings, when they can't control what's going on in their life emotionally, they can do things like controlling what they eat or don't eat, or they can control how their house looks, or how their things are, and how they fold things, because that's what they can control. Meri also discussed how living that way and being involved in that cult has really made her struggle to connect with men, because a lot of guys want nothing to do with it because of her involvement in that lifestyle. This is another reality that is really sad, because anyone that's going to walk into this world and willfully date someone that has a television show and is part of a cult, it's a very complicated decision, because the cult that Meri is from is very dangerous. The men that are part of that cult are effectively sovereign citizens that don't respect the rule of the law, that regularly traffic in women and human labor, and they don't care if they break laws by having illegal guns or even trafficking guns. They don't abide by laws. They don't care. They don't believe they have to. There's a lot of lawlessness and abuse, and they don't believe they have to answer to anyone. When someone walks into that kind of environment, they're walking into a world where there's a lot of criminality. Some people don't want to be associated with it for that purpose. And it's sad, because it's not fair to the person that leaves. They can't help where they came from. But the person that's walking into it has to be aware that they're going to be exposed to all of this, and they have to be okay with it. People have been talked to that have married into it, and they were so naive, not realizing how dangerous it was. Think of Janelle. She went over there to explore something, and look what she got sucked into, and then her family tried to pull her out, and they said she got into a cult and she got involved with all these really bad people, and they cut her off. And to this day, she's still estranged from a lot of people from her family because of that. It's a complicated situation. It's very rare for someone to find someone like Christine did, where the guy is okay with it and understands it because his family had members that were a part of it. Meri's full interview is really eye-opening. She speaks about her relationship with Kody and their relationship falling apart, about how he's changed as a father and the dynamic between them today. She doesn't say that she hates him. She just doesn't want to be with him, and she wishes that he would change things, but she doesn't want to trash him because she just wants to move on. What do you think about Meri's revelations in this interview? Do you see her story differently after everything she shared? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy these deep dives and want to stay updated on all the latest Sister Wives news and analysis, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown.